All right, let's dive into this deep dive on building some serious muscle, like the dense kind. The kind that makes you look yoked.
Yeah, the really powerful physique.
Exactly. And you've given us some awesome articles to dig into here from Men's Journal, Set for Set, and even bodybuilding.com. All pretty recent, too.
Yeah,
So,
all within the past year.
yeah. So we're working with up-to-date stuff, and they're all from, experts and stuff, PhDs, certified strength and conditioning
Yeah,
specialists.
some really great sources.
Definitely. And I gotta say, going through these, I was pretty surprised by some of the stuff they emphasize. Like, it's not all about just lifting heavy.
Yeah, right.
There's this whole science behind it. Like, there's a specific rep range that's key for hypertrophy, and they all talked about how sleep is just as important as protein.
Proud. Yeah. What's really interesting is that all these articles really drive home the idea that building serious muscle isn't just about brute force, it's about, well, understanding the science of it.
Working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Men's Journal article, they really hammered home the importance of compound lifts. So I guess to kick things off, what makes those exercises so essential?
Well, they're like the foundation. They're the moves that are going to give you the most bang for your buck, right?
Right.
So squats, deadlifts, bench presses, shoulder presses, rows, all that good stuff. Those are compound movements, and unlike isolation exercises, the ones that just work one muscle,
Right.
compound lifts engage like a bunch of muscle groups all at the same time, which triggers uh, a much bigger muscle growth response, right? It's like a total body kind of thing.
Yeah, and they create this really powerful hormonal response too, which helps with muscle development. You're working more muscles, you're burning more energy, and you just get more out of your gym time.
Okay, so compound lifts are key. But one thing that really stood out to me in all of these articles was the emphasis on proper form. They all agreed that it was super important, like maybe even more important than how much weight you're lifting. Why is that?
Well, think about it this way. As you start lifting heavier, maintaining good form becomes super crucial for, well, avoiding injuries.
Right, right.
You're protecting your spine, you're making sure you're engaging the right muscles, and you're going through the full range of motion for each exercise. You want to do it right, not just do a lot of it.
Makes sense. So, like, if I'm doing a deadlift, what are some things I should be really focusing on to make sure my form is on point?
Okay, so for deadlifts, your spine is like super important. You got to keep it neutral. Like you absolutely do not want to round your back.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. That's bad news.
Yep. It can lead to some pretty serious injuries. Imagine like a steel rod running from the bottom of your skull all the way down to like your tailbone. You want to keep that image in your head throughout the lift.
It's basically keep your back straight.
Straight and strong, yeah. Engaging your core muscles is really key for that too.
Okay, so core engaged, spine straight. What else?
You want to make sure you're lifting with your legs, not your back. Think about it like you're pushing the floor away from you rather than pulling the weight up.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and that helps protect your lower back too, and make sure you're using the right muscles to lift.
All right, so drive up with my legs, core tight, back straight, like a little checklist, before each rep.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, what's heavy is different for everyone. Like what you find heavy might be a warm-up for somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
The focus should always be on maintaining that perfect form throughout the whole movement. Controlled movements, really feeling those muscles work. That's what really builds muscle.
Gotcha. And speaking of working smarter, not harder, you mentioned something earlier about periodization, right?
Right.
The Men's Journal article talked about that a bit.
Yeah, it was all about periodization. It's this strategic approach to training where you change up your workouts over time to avoid plateaus and to maximize muscle growth. It's like if you do the same workout with the same weight and the same reps every week, your body's eventually going to adapt and your progress is going to slow down.
So you got to keep your body guessing.
Exactly. And that's where periodization comes in. You could have like a strength phase where you're lifting heavier weights for fewer reps, like 3 sets of 5, and then you switch to a hypertrophy phase where you up the reps to, say, 3 sets of 10 to 12.
Yeah.
It's all about keeping your body adapting and preventing those plateaus.
Okay, so instead of just going through the motions and doing the same thing every time, you got to be strategic about it. Plan it out, change things up.
Yeah, definitely. Be mindful and purposeful.
Gotcha. And another thing these articles emphasized was rest and recovery. That no days off mentality can actually be like counterproductive.
Totally. Like your body needs time to recover,
So rest days are just as important as the days you're hitting it hard.
Absolutely. Deload weeks, like every 7 to 8 weeks, are super
Yeah.
important. They let your body fully recover from all that intense training. It's like hitting the reset button so you can come back even stronger.
Okay, so rest is key. Now let's talk muscles. Both the Men's Journal and Set for articles spent a good chunk of time talking about shoulder development. And they weren't just talking aesthetics.
No, no, definitely not just about looks.
Right.
Broad shoulders are actually really important for overall strength, preventing injuries and, well, for a balanced physique,
Okay, right.
To build strong shoulders, you need to work all three heads of the deltoid muscles: the anterior, the medial, and the posterior.
So I'm guessing it takes more than just the classic shoulder press.
You got it. Think lateral raises for the medial delts, reverse pec deck for the posterior delts, and exercises like one-arm rows that hit multiple heads.
Lots of variety.
Yeah, and don't forget those shoulder stabilizer muscles.
Oh yeah, those are important too. What about those like the rotator cuff and all that? How do we make sure those are strong?
Well, while isolation exercises have their place, set really pushes free weights for those.
So ditch the machines.
Not completely, but free weights definitely demand more stability and control, which forces those smaller stabilizing muscles to work harder, and that helps them become more resilient, less prone to injury.
Okay, so free weights are the way to go for overall shoulder strength and stability.
Got it. Now, what about rep ranges? Is there like a sweet spot when it comes to maximizing muscle growth?
The research consistently points to 6-12 reps as the ideal range for hypertrophy. That's the muscle building process.
So 612, that's the magic number, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just picking a weight in that range and like going for it.
Yeah, you're right. There's definitely a strategy involved. So like while the research just suggests that those higher rep ranges, they can help with muscle growth, they're not as efficient for overall muscle building.
It really comes down to like training volume, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can lift lighter weights for more reps or heavier weights for fewer reps. And, well, both can stimulate muscle growth, but the heavier weight, fewer reps, that'll get you there faster.
So if I'm aiming for that 6-12 rep range, how should I approach each set?
The key is to really push yourself to near failure, no matter what rep range you're working with.
Okay.
So that means reaching the point where you can't physically do another rep, with good form. That feeling of fatigue, that's what really tells those muscle fibers to adapt and grow.
Got it. Push to near failure. Stay in that 6-12 rep range. Okay, now let's talk fuel. You can't build muscle without the right nutrition. So what do these articles say about the essential nutrients for getting dense muscle?
Well, all three articles, Men's Journal, Set for Set, and Bodybuilding.com,
Yeah.
they all emphasize protein, obviously. It's super important for building and repairing muscle tissue.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Like Bodybuilding.com recommends at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Per pound. Wow, okay. And Men's Journal recommended 20 to 40 grams before bed. Is there actually any benefit to taking protein right before you sleep? I've heard that before.
There is. It's actually a great strategy for muscle recovery and growth while you sleep. It gives your body this steady stream of amino acids throughout the night.
Interesting. So that's a myth busted.
Yeah.
Another myth I've heard is that you should cut out carbs when you're trying to build muscle, but these articles didn't seem to agree with that.
I used to think the same thing, actually, but the bodybuilding.com article really changed my mind. It explains that carbs are your body's main source of energy, and they're super important for replenishing your glycogen stores, the ones that get depleted during those tough workouts.
Right.
And they actually help spare protein so your body can use that protein for muscle building instead of using it for energy.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So balanced diet, plenty of protein, good carbs, healthy fats. Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about supplements? Are those a must-have for building dense muscle?
That's a question that comes up a lot. And, while supplements can be helpful, they shouldn't be your main focus. Remember we were talking about working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
That applies to nutrition, too.
So focus on whole foods, and supplements are kind of like an extra.
Exactly. Think of them as like an addition to a solid foundation of whole food nutrition, not a replacement. Like Men's Journal, they actually caution against relying on supplements too much. They really emphasized focusing on the fundamentals first: training, nutrition, and sleep.
Okay. Well, speaking of sleep, what role does that play in building muscle?
Oh, sleep is super important. It's not just about feeling rested. It's about giving your body the time to actually recover and rebuild muscle tissue.
Yeah.
It's your body's repair and recovery time.
Yeah. I remember that Men's Journal article put it pretty bluntly. If you don't sleep, you don't grow.
Yeah, pretty much. During sleep, your body releases growth hormone, which is crucial for muscle growth, obviously. And it gives your muscles a chance to, like, repair themselves from all those tiny tears that happen during lifting.
Yeah.
That's what leads to bigger, stronger muscles.
So 7, 9 hours of quality sleep, no more all-nighters.
That's the sweet spot, yeah. You want to make sure your sleep environment is good too, dark, cool, quiet, and try to keep a consistent sleep schedule. Your body will thank you for it.
Great advice. So we've covered the importance of compound lifts, nutrition, rest. Building muscle really is a holistic thing, huh? But let's dive into, like, training techniques. What are some strategies that can really up my game?
Set had the interesting section on the steel mace. They called it a game changer for those stabilizer muscles.
A steel mace. I've seen this at the gym, but honestly, I've been kind of intimidated to try one. What makes them so effective?
Well, the way the weight is offset in the mace, it creates this, like, unique challenge that really forces your stabilizers to work hard to control the movement. It's almost like a full body workout with one tool.
Okay. What kind of exercises do you even do with a steel mace?
They mentioned exercises like the 360 and the 10 to 2. Those work your entire shoulder complex, including those important rotator cuff muscles. They help build strength, stability, and coordination, all super important for avoiding injury and, just getting better overall.
So if I'm looking for a challenge and want to target those stabilizer muscles, the steel mace is worth a shot. But man, those swinging movements are kind of scary.
Yeah, I get it. The key is to start slow. Focus on getting the basic movements down before you try anything too fancy. And don't be afraid to ask a trainer for some pointers. They can help you learn the right technique and make sure you're using it safely.
All right, so steel mace for those who want a challenge. Got it. Now, what about those classic bodybuilding routines? Are those effective for building dense muscle?
Well, both Men's Journal and Set for Set actually cautioned against just, like, blindly following the routines that pro bodybuilders use.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
Well, they pointed out that those routines are made for people with specific genetics, really intense training volumes, and, well, sometimes chemical assistance. It's not always a level playing field.
So trying to be like those guys might not be the best idea.
Right. They emphasize finding a program that's, like, sustainable and enjoyable for you. Consistency is key, and you're more likely to stick with something you actually enjoy.
Okay, so find what works for me and stick with it. Consistency over intensity. Right?
Exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And speaking of which, let's talk about warming up properly, something we all should be doing, but sometimes we skip it.
Yeah, guilty as charged. I definitely skip my warm-up sometimes, especially when I'm short on time. But why is it so important?
Well, Set really hammered home the importance of warming up those stabilizer muscles before you start hitting the weights.
Okay.
They suggested doing a bit of light cardio to get the blood flowing, dynamic stretches to improve your range of motion, and even activation exercises for those specific muscle groups.
So it's not just about getting your heart rate up.
Right. Warming up properly gets your body ready for the workout, it reduces your risk of injury, and can even help you perform better. And those activation exercises, they target those small stabilizer muscles,
Yeah.
to prime them for what's coming.
Okay, so no more skipping the warm-up. I'm starting to realize that, like, every little detail matters when it comes to building dense muscle. But what about, like, the mental game? Does your mindset affect your gains?
Absolutely. Men's Journal was all about the importance of a positive and focused mindset. They say that your mental state can really impact your results. If you believe in yourself, you're more likely to put in the effort and stay committed even when things get tough.
So it's about mental toughness too, huh?
Yeah. So cultivate that positive mindset. Visualize yourself achieving your goals and celebrate those little wins along the way. Those can really keep you motivated.
Great advice. Now, plateaus, those are a pain. Any tips from the experts on how to break through those sticking points?
Bodybuilding.com had some good suggestions. They said to change up your routine, try new exercises, increase the weight, or shorten your rest periods. It's all about getting those muscles out of their comfort zone and forcing them to adapt.
Got to keep them guessing. But how do you balance that with, like, staying consistent with a program?
That's where tracking your progress comes in. They also emphasize that. If you keep a workout log, you can see what's working and what's not and adjust your program accordingly. And most importantly, they really stressed consistency. Building muscle takes time. You got to stay committed to your goals, even when you don't see results right away.
Patience and perseverance. Got it. But there are other factors that can affect muscle growth too, right? Like stress.
Oh, definitely. Bodybuilding.com talked about how stress releases cortisol, which can actually block muscle growth. It's like your body's working against itself.
So how do you manage stress, especially when life gets crazy?
You got to find healthy ways to manage it, for sure. Not just for muscle building, but for your overall well-being, you know? Meditation, yoga, even just spending time in nature, those can all help reduce stress and get you relaxed.
So stress management is just as important as those hours in the gym. Now, something that can hold people back, especially beginners, is gym intimidation. Any advice from the experts on how to deal with that?
Men's Journal had some good tips for that. They said to start with lighter weights, focus on your form, and, like, most importantly, don't compare yourself to others. You know,
Yeah.
everyone starts somewhere, and those experienced lifters, they were all beginners once, too.
That's a good point. Easy to forget sometimes. So focus on my own journey, my own progress. Now, we've talked a lot about strength training, but what about cardio? Does that have a place in a program for building dense muscle?
Bodybuilding.com had a pretty interesting take on that. They said cardio can actually be good for muscle growth as long as you don't overdo it.
So strategic cardio.
Yeah. They suggested doing low-intensity cardio, like walking or swimming, for like 20-30 minutes a few times a week. It can improve your heart health, increase blood flow to your muscles, and even boost your recovery. But too much cardio can actually interfere with muscle growth, so you gotta find that balance.
Listen to your body, figure out what works best.
Okay, exactly. And, you know, there's one more thing I want to talk about before we move on.
Breathing.
Breathing. I know it's important, but how does it affect my workouts?
Well, Set for Set emphasized how important it is to breathe properly during exercise. They explained that deep breathing can help get oxygen to your muscles, reduce fatigue, and can actually help you perform better.
So I shouldn't be holding my breath during those heavy lifts, huh? Definitely not. Make sure you're breathing steadily through your workouts. Inhale when you're lowering the weight and exhale when you're lifting it.
In, out. Okay. I'm really starting to see how every little detail plays a role.
That's the thing. It's all about being mindful of your body, you know, paying attention to those cues. And, you know, we've covered a lot in this part, but there's still more to explore.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into building dense muscle. We've covered the basics, the foundation, and now it's time to get into some of the more advanced stuff, the stuff that can really take your training to the next level, ready to push those limits.
Yeah, let's get into it. So remember we talked about periodization. You got to change up your workouts over time.
Yeah. To avoid plateaus, keep the muscles guessing.
Right. Well, Men's Journal suggests taking that even further, incorporating different phases into your program.
Okay, so how would that work in practice?
Well, you might have a strength phase, right, where you focus on lifting heavy, fewer reps, like 3 sets of 5. And then you switch to a hypertrophy phase, more reps, maybe 3 sets of 10 to 12, really focus on that muscle pump. And of course, don't forget those deload weeks. They're crucial for letting your body recover and get ready for the next round of training.
So it's like a cycle, push hard, then recover, then push hard again.
Makes sense. Now, what about specific techniques during those workouts? Like, are there ways to really intensify those sets and get more muscle fibers working?
Oh, yeah. Bodybuilding.com talked about drop sets. Those are great for boosting muscle growth. You basically do a set until you hit failure. Like you can't do another rep with good form. Then you immediately lower the weight and keep going until you hit failure again.
So you're pushing those muscles to the max and then pushing them even further. Intense. What other techniques did they mention?
They also talked about supersets, where you do 2 exercises back to back, no rest in between. They suggested pairing exercises that work opposite muscle groups, like doing bench presses followed immediately by rows.
Oh, so you're hitting both sides.
Yeah, it's like a 1-2 punch. It ups the intensity and saves time, too.
Efficient. Now let's talk about the age-old debate. Machines versus free weights. Which one is better for building dense muscle? Well, Set for Set was all about free weights. They argued that free weights make you stabilize more, engage more muscles overall. You're not just lifting the weight, you're controlling it, which really works those stabilizer muscles.
Right. But are machines totally out of the picture if you want to get that dense muscular physique?
Not necessarily. Set did acknowledge that machines can be useful, especially if you're new to training or if you're focusing on a specific muscle group. They can give you more stability and support, which can be helpful if you're still working on your technique or if you're, recovering from an injury.
So it's not about one being better than the other. It's about using them both strategically, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, we talked about having a balanced training program. What about training splits? Like, how should I organize my workouts to maximize muscle growth?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Bodybuilding.com recommended the upper-lower split. You train your upper body one day, lower body the next. They suggested 2 upper body days, 2 lower body days a week. That gives each muscle group enough time to recover and rebuild, which helps with growth.
Makes sense. And, it's not just about the physical stuff, right? We talked about mindset, but what about other things that can affect your progress, like
Right.
the gym environment itself?
Oh, yeah. Men's Journal had some good advice for that, especially for beginners who might feel intimidated by the gym. They said to start with lighter weights, focus on your form, and don't compare yourself to everyone else.
That's so important, right? It's so easy to get caught up in what other people are doing.
Yeah, but it's your journey, your progress. Focus on that.
Right. Now, before we wrap things up, I think it's important to remember that building muscle is a journey. It's not like you reach a point and you're done. It's something you keep working on.
Yeah, bodybuilding.com really emphasized consistency and patience when it comes to building muscle. They said that results take time. You have to stick with your program even when you don't see those changes right away. It's about trusting the process, and enjoying it.
Yeah, that's so true. It's easy to get discouraged, but you got to keep showing up, keep putting in the work.
Exactly. And it's not just about the gym. It's about taking care of yourself overall. Eating right, getting enough sleep, managing stress, having a positive mindset. It all plays a role.
Well said. This has been a fascinating deep dive. We've learned so much about building dense muscle, from the basic compound lifts to advanced techniques like drop sets and supersets.
We've talked about nutrition, rest, the mental game, and while these experts have shared some incredible insights, ultimately, the most important expert is you.
Absolutely. Listen to your body, try different things, find what works for you, and most importantly, enjoy the journey.
Now go out there and build those muscles.
And until next time, keep diving deep.